Hello. My German goes like this. Herzlich willkommen. Okay, meine Damen und Herren.
Herzlich willkommen.
Guten Tag. And that's
Shalom.
Shalom. I was very impressed with some of the German speakers in the hall. They know so much about us, Israelis, and yeah, it's really interesting. Since we are a small group, it's going to be very informal, which is really, really nice for us. So whenever you feel the need to ask a question, to ask for clarification, to ask something that is interesting for you, please do. Talya started, the CEO of the ITC, started by explaining what were our plans for the next, actually 3 hours that we have. It's divided into 2 panels actually. One panel was initially dedicated to a little bit of our work around the world, and the second panel would be what was planned, and everything is changing in so many ways in here. The plan was to take a case study. The case study is starting with a story of one of the Kurdish ladies who's right here, and try and kind of explain and implement and talk about the different issues and different things that we do through the story of the Kurdish people, but just as a case study and not because they're the main topic in here, even though they're very important. So what it is that we're doing, and before that, I think you said something about ITC, and I'm really sorry, I'm really happy, I'm sorry for the promotion. I'm not the CEO of the Community Stress Prevention Center, I'm the Deputy CEO. Now I'm okay. I'm not going to be sent back. What is the Community Stress Prevention Center? It's an organization based in Israel, in the northern part of Israel, about 3-4 kilometers actually from the Lebanese border, in the city of Kiryat Shmona. Whoever knows about the city, and this was the city that suffered a lot of the terrorism and shelling of missiles throughout the years. Luckily, we have a quiet time right now. Everything moved down to the southern part of Israel, and that's where a lot of experience was accumulated in the northern part, now implemented in the south. And the Community Stress Prevention Center is one of the founders of the Israeli Trauma Coalition, which is kind of an umbrella organization for organizations that are dealing with trauma around Israel. So let me start with what we want to say and what we want to show. It's kind of difficult to try and talk about all the subjects and all the issues in a very short presentation. What we would like to do is divide our presentation into 3 parts. I'm going to give some of the, let's say, more theoretical background. Then Talya is going to talk about the work that ITC is actually doing in giving out services for people around the world. And then David is going to talk about one sequence of these services, which is the National Hotline. And this is what we kind of planned to show you the line, starting with the theory, combining with the practice throughout, which is exactly what we do in every place we go to. We combine theory or academic knowledge with practice and research throughout everything that we do. So my plan was to talk to you about a little bit of what we learned around the world. Some of it is going to include some of the stories, because stories are so much more interesting than just giving you facts. So let's start with the places we've been to. This is just a, it's a small slide, so we can put everything in, and you can see that we've been through some of the most interesting crises and disasters in the world. I didn't say that, but in a kind of a later section of this presentation, we're going to move to the refugee issue. But we're going to start with disasters and crises throughout the world, because this is where we learn most of what we know. And of course, I should say that everything in the background is all Israeli knowledge and expertise, because at a certain point we used to say that we were, hopefully, I'm very sorry to say that we're, and not still are, the laboratory for emergencies for the world in Israel. That's how we kind of looked at ourselves in a certain way, because we learned about emergencies and disasters and crises firsthand. So this is why the Israeli flag is on the back of all the other places. So as you can see, some of the places are very interesting and very recent. Some of them are already kind of old for us. I didn't put in Turkey the earthquake like in the 90s because this is really, really going back. But some of the interesting places were in Japan, where we did a lot of work for about 4 years after the triple disaster, the earthquake, the tsunami, and the nuclear disaster over there. We're still doing some work in the Philippines. Actually, we were planning. The reason I didn't go to the Philippines is because I'm here. But some of our staff is still going to the Philippines to do more work following the storms over there. And one and maybe two places that we're still working at right now is Paris. We've been doing a lot of work in Paris following the events of last year, which are very, very difficult to cope with. And we're still working in Ukraine, which is so much closer to what we actually will start talking about in here, the issues of refugees and IDPs, internally displaced people. But let's go to what we found out. If you look at these pictures, these are from different places in the world, in different places that we've been to, and you can see that the human language, or maybe the body language, or the physical language of people in distress, of people in disasters and crises, is the same body language. These are photos from New Orleans, Chechnya. If you remember actually it's not Chechnya, it's Beslan. We call it Chechnya, but it's Ossetia, North Ossetia. This is the place where 340 children were murdered in a terrorist action. I can't even remember the year, but we started working over there with Russian psychologists to help the people overcome the issues over there. Then there's the lady from Sri Lanka, and this is the lady from Kiryat Shmona, Israel, during the 2006 war, and go on. And it's all the same body language. And even more interesting than that, 3 different ladies from 3 different continents, but they all look the same when it comes to coping with disasters, with coping with issues that they need to cope with. And this is one of our mottos. We, throughout the years, accumulated a lot of experience in dealing with situations like this, and we are willing and are actually doing that, going to different places in the world to use our knowledge and use our expertise in helping others. And that's why we are actually doing this, and why we will continue doing this, because we think that we can help places and people in distress or under distress. So what did we learn in so many places that we've been to? And I'm going to give you just really the headlines of the whole thing. What we actually talk about at the beginning is the immediate needs of the people in situations like this. And of course, the immediate thing that we never talk about is to be rescued. People need to be rescued, and everything and relating to our own expertise in psychosocial issues would come second. First of all, we need to make sure that they are rescued. There's something very interesting that we should teach ourselves, and we already use it as a motto for everything that we do. In most cases, people, hello, please come in. This is our friend, but here.
Thank you. People are coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is actually a picture from the Turkish earthquake in the 90s. But the reason why I'm showing it is because we know from research and we know from reality about 60 to 70% of the people moving here, so you can see, are going to be saved by locals, by family or friends, and by people near them. So many times we are trying, even after disasters, but especially before disasters, because part of the disaster cycle is the preparedness towards things that may happen, in the preparation process, but also after disasters, we try and teach communities and people, individuals and families to learn ways of helping themselves, because they are going to give the most help to themselves and to their other relatives, friends, and so on. So this is one of the most important issues that we usually deal with. Teach communities self-help. It will come also in a different way when we continue. The second principle of, please sit down. The second principle that we need to talk about is families. Think about yourself, whenever there's something happening in the neighborhood, even a car accident that everybody's talking about, the immediate thing that you do is start calling your family and loved ones and try and make what everybody is. Yeah, please. Okay, so we're talking about the basic needs or the immediate needs of people in disasters. The first one was to be rescued. The second is to locate the whereabouts of your family and friends. Every time you can feel it on yourselves. When there is a little crisis, the first thing that everybody does is looking for family and friends. That's why so many times the lines are falling down, the networks are actually overwhelmed, and so many times there will be a communication issue. The immediate consequence of this is that we have to start, and that's something we need to teach every place, to start a system of trying to put families and friends together right after disasters. To find your friends, to find your families. You're going to find out that this is also a very important issue when we talk about refugees. So contact with family and friends, that will be the second one. The third thing, or the third principle of helping others, is to give some kind of orientation, to give information. People want to know what happened. Even if they are in the middle of the crisis, even if they're in the middle of the disaster, if they're part of it, they need to know the general information. They need to know what happened. They need to know how to relate to them. We have a lot of myths about the behavior of people under disasters or under crisis. Some of them would say, and this is something you're going to find out leaders saying all the time, let's not tell the people all the truth, because if we tell them the truth, they're going to be panicking or they're going to be hysterical. This is the complete opposite of reality. When you tell people the truth, when you give them an orientation, when you give them a direction, they will do whatever they need to be doing to help themselves. It's not always going to be for the benefit of all the other people, but it's going to be helping themselves, because once you know the situation, once you can assess it for yourself, once you can build your own orientation, you can also build the next thing, which is very important for us, a sense of control. What happens in disaster, except for the chaos, except for everything else, is the feeling or the sense of people that they lose control over everything, that everything is uncertain, that everything is out of our hands. What we need to do in so many times, and this is one of the basic interventions that we need to do, is give people a sense that they have some control over their lives. Some control could mean that I can choose if I will be sitting in here or in there. But that would be a control. If we give them any sense of control, they think that they're okay. That's why so many times we start interventions by asking people, what is it that you can do for yourself? Let me give you an example for that. When Obama was running for president the first time 8 years ago, he had this video, Yes, We Can. Probably you remember it was in different languages. So at the time of that election period, I couldn't use the video, but once he was elected, I started using the video in sessions with people. Especially we started this in Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina, where we learned a lot of issues. And we started by putting on the video every session, every week of workshops, everything we did. We started with a video of what we can do. Yes, we can, yes, we can. It's kind of a brainwash thing. Yes, we can, yes, we can, yes, we can. Then we gave them a big poster, and we asked them to write down in big bold letters, yes, I can. And then write down what it is that I can do for myself right now. It made a huge difference. People say a lot of things, but one of the interesting parts, or one of the interesting stories, is when we were working in Haiti after the earthquake in 2010, I think, right? Yeah, I have it somewhere. It was very, very difficult to bring people into the room and ask them to do something for themselves, because they were living under the assumption that everything is God's will, And you know, in Jewish, so I can't even remember why I started telling you about Haiti. But I was talking about the, just for the benefit of everybody that came in, I was talking about the immediate needs of people. I said first we need to rescue people, then we need to do something about family reunification. And I gave you some examples for that. And then I was talking about information. And now, let me see, we were talking about sense of control, right? And the way that we do it by asking people to do things for themselves and trying to empower them to do things for themselves. We need some, okay, so it's becoming really quiet in here, so we can continue. So, I was telling you about Haiti, what we did with them. We asked the group, what can you do for yourself? Like, yes, I can. And a lot of people said, no, there's nothing we can do. It's all about God and the government. And then I did something that was really, really kind of difficult, and I apologize for that. I sent God and the government for vacation together in a different place. I said, okay, now you're all by yourself. What can you do now? It was very difficult to make a short, like a long story short. Eventually, one person wrote down a note that said, I can clean my tent. They were living in tent cities after the earthquake. I can clean my tent tomorrow morning. Then the next person said, okay, but if you're going to clean your tent, I'll clean mine. And then the third person said, okay, if you clean yours and you clean yours, who's going to clean the outside? And we started up a cleaning group for the whole camp. And this was the beginning of the work, of the recovery work that we actually did with them. Another group said, one person said, what I can do is find children that are roaming out in the streets, that are not going, excuse me? Sorry, it's disturbing, believe me, so, no, thank you. You need to take control of it. And the other person said, I can find children that are roaming in the streets and try and teach them reading and writing because they cannot afford going to school. So they started up a group that were actually quote-unquote hunting children that were not going to any education system. And that started another project in the same place. So this is how we look at things, just for by examples. What we actually talk about a lot is dignity. How do we keep the dignity of the people, of the victims, of the survivors? Because so many times when you're trying to help somebody, you kind of patronize people, you paternalize them, and you don't even pay attention to them, but you do that. So, the reason why I put those pictures in here is because this one right there reminds me of a story again in Mississippi. We were working in a city in Mississippi called St. Louis. The hurricane Katrina went right through that city and nothing was left standing up. And people were left without anything for themselves. And there were two ladies that were working with me over there. Actually, they were there before me. I just joined them afterwards, but they told me this story. They were in charge of a big tent that the Salvation Army gave them and the Red Cross. They gave them a big tent with a lot of contributions of clothes and blankets and shoes and stuff like this. Nobody wanted to come in because it was all in boxes. And when you had to go look for whatever is good for you, you had to dig through the boxes. The two ladies realized that this was the point. So they found out like string lines and hangers, and they hung everything on hangers in the big tent. Everybody came in because it was a completely different experience. You didn't have to be like a beggar going through and digging through the boxes. You were able to go and dignify yourself in picking up whatever you needed. So this is basically, you can see by my stories, I'm trying to say that everything is just simple thinking about the people, how we can help them, how we can do stuff for them. European Commission just came in. Okay, so the other thing we need to think about is restoration of basic faith. What are people actually believing in? What is actually motivating them? Are they believing in religion? Are they believing in other values? What is actually good for them? So we need to do a lot of work on that area, and these are the basic needs. I know that I'm running through the issues right now because we're kind of, kind of short on time now. But then again, look at this picture. And when you look at this picture, all you see is a woman carrying a huge bag, like a sack on her head, with the goodwill of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, and giving out food and and making sure that people have their basic needs. I see a different thing. This is taken from a picture that I was taking this picture in Haiti. Think about a whole street of people going with these big bags on their heads about 3, 4, 5 months after the earthquake. This is giving them food, giving them water, but it's not about helping them to learn how to help themselves. This is about teaching people to help themselves. So yes, on the first days, on the first weeks, we need to give them food and shelter and everything, but then we need to teach them how to start creating resources for themselves. And this is a basic need. We can do a lot of psychosocial issues, but if we don't teach them how to make their own living, to learn how to become resourceful again, it's not really helping them. Of course, right after this, we had to deal with cholera. Cholera was one of the major issues in Haiti. Everybody was not talking about the earthquake anymore after about 4 or 5 months because we had diseases. We have to make sure that this is actually working. Now, one more thing about Haiti, which we learned very much during working there. Then I was talking about empowerment, and now I want to talk about one major principle of work all over the world. The principle of always working with a local partner. Never, in anywhere, we are working, just coming and put ourselves in a place and not working with a local partner. It goes to the point that sometimes you don't have a working government, like in Haiti, right after the earthquake, there was nobody to talk to. There were no government officers that are actually, they were there, but they were not very efficient. Nobody was actually working there. So we ended up working with a neighborhood committee. When you say neighborhood committee, it's 400,000 people in the neighborhood. It's called Soleil. And you know what? We didn't even know what exactly was this neighborhood committee, but we found out that once we wanted to bring in people from education, from the health services, religious leaders, they were able to bring them in. And when we said something like, we want to do this with you or that with you, they were the agency or the local agent or the local partner that were able to bring in the people. So it was actually something that could be implemented, because once you come in, you do your work, you go away, nothing is left there. The way we work is we come to a place, we look for partners. Usually we preferably we would like to see professionals in psychosocial issues or religion or health or anything that's connected to that. Teach them and they teach the population. That's how we get to more and more and more people. We start like in a small kind of funnel way, and we start very small, and then we go to more and more and more and more people. That's very important for us. I'm showing you the picture of Mississippi because I want to mention the next principle. We need to look at long-term effects of situations. Usually, when there is something going on in the world, my children usually say, so do you go? Orlando. So you're still here, you didn't go to Orlando. Usually we don't go on the first day. Usually we don't go on the first week. Usually we start working after a few weeks or after a few months. Of course, sometimes there is an exception for that. And why we do that? First of all, because remember, first we need to give people their basic needs, like the Maslow hierarchy. And then we can start looking at what we can offer them. They could be or can be open for us to start learning new stuff about psychosocial issues. But it's even more than that. In Mississippi, we worked 4 years or 5 years right after the hurricane. But when we talk about long-term effects, I want to give you 2 examples, very small ones, just to understand what it means to talk about long-term effects. The children that were born during or right after the hurricane, Katrina. 3-4 years after Katrina, the people in the kindergarten system, in the education system, found out that there is a very interesting physiological and psychological developmental problem. And that was connected to the fact that small children had no place for physical development. You know, children when they're very small, they need to crawl from one place to another. They're all living in small apartments, not even apartments, in small campers. There was nowhere the children could actually do their own development. This was very obvious in the education system 4 years after, 5 years after. So this is a very small thing. You can say, okay, big deal. So no, but that's something that the community has to deal with 3-4 years after. Another effect with a long-term consequence was the term of family issues. A lot of people found out that they, because of what happened to them during the storm, they had issues with marriage, there were issues with alcohol, there were issues with drugs. A lot of first responders, like police people, people with the first, the medical services, their responses were so good. I'm sorry, but it's still very much, I can't even think what I want to say. Okay, I'm losing my adaptation. So first responders had a very high rate of suicide, high rate of car accidents. Police showed a very high rate of brutality, of violence towards people in the streets. Just because you want to pick somebody for doing a driving misdemeanor or offense, then it ended up in violence of the police towards the other people. So these are the kinds of issues we're talking about, and not only just making sure that they have the first initial needs. So we talk about that. Now, a very important issue, and I'm sure most of the people sitting here would find this issue very, very relevant. What about the cultural respect and cultural adequacy? We always talk about cultural competency, which is very disturbing for me because we're not talking about competency. We're talking about adequate treatment of the people, adequate relation, adequate way of dealing with the people that we're going to work with. I'm going to give you one example. I was working in Uganda after the civil war. There were 80,000 people killed in one tribe that was fighting amongst itself. It was 2008, the end of the war, and we were going there to try and help the people. And I was looking at a program of a Christian organization that came with a Christian idea that people have to forgive each other. There has to be forgiveness. Okay? And they were trying to teach the people of Uganda how to forgive each other. And of course it didn't work, because every time I asked somebody, so how do you forgive? They could only chant again and again and again the same verses that they heard. I went back home to Israel, and I Googled. 2008, I didn't have Google on my way with me, so I Googled the name of the tribe. In about 15 minutes, I found out that they have a certain forgiveness ceremony for ages, for decades, and they're using it. It's a very simple one. The two opposing sides of the conflict are meeting together. One is bringing a sheep, another is bringing a goat. They come in, they slaughter them, and they cut them in half. Every side, they're saying nothing. So every side of the conflict is taking half of a sheep and half of a goat. They drink some tea made out of a bitter herb that's growing up in that place, and they go away, and that's it. So how can we come and teach them Christian forgiveness? They're Christians, by the way, but in their own way. But they have no idea of Christian forgiveness. They do have an idea of forgiveness in their own way. When we go to a place like this, we have to learn about the culture. And every time we go to a place that we need to help, we're trying, and if we don't have time to go there, we ask the question, is what we're teaching you relevant for you? Can you use it? Is it respectful for you? Another thing in terms of culture, we were working a lot in Sri Lanka and India, and you know how the kind of head movement goes like this, like yes, I can do it because you need to do that. Yes, and how do you say no? No, same. So at a certain point I had to ask, okay, when you do this, is this yes or no? And they said, yeah, this is yes. I couldn't make the difference. So I asked them if it's okay to ask them whenever I say something and they say yes or no, if I can ask them the question. Can we use certain materials? Like we were going to use clay with the people in Sri Lanka. We asked them, can we do that? And why did we want to use clay? Because sometimes we want to use kind of creative materials Are they going to be there or not? Can we teach them how to work with paper and crayons if they don't have any right after a disaster? It's going to be a waste of their time and our own time. At a certain point, Talya asked me in Haiti, who do you think we should ask? Because I went there in the fact-finding mission, and she was in Israel, and she asked me, who are the people that needs to be sent? I said, those people that can work with mud and stones, because that's all we can find in here. So if we can find people to help that can use the local materials, that would be very helpful. Okay, so, there is a part that with all the commotion in here, I lost something. I was going to talk to you about the issues of refugees. Okay, so I'm going to take just a few minutes, and if you just pardon me for a second when I try and solve the technological thing here. Okay, I want to take this just for okay, this. Okay. We're talking much about refugees in here. And I will say a few words about working with refugees, what may be very important for us. Then I'm going to move over to you. We'll talk about our international work, the practicality, and then David, as I said, is going to talk about the other things. So I need 2 glasses. Okay, so first of all, when we talk about refugees, I went to the definition of refugees to make sure that we're all on the same page. And you have to say, yeah, adaptability. You think it's going to come? Yes. Okay, so when you can look at the definition while I'm speaking, that you can see that the one most important word for me is the word fear. People that are driven by fear out of their countries, out of their homes. In 2006 in Israel, when we had the war with Lebanon, I used the word refugees for Israelis, and I was people got very angry with me. I said, you know, you could be a refugee even if you're in a 5-star hotel, because you cannot go back to your house. You cannot do whatever you want to do. So you are a refugee if you're forced out of your house because of fear of all that. So fear is one of the driving forces. Very important for us in research. A lot of times there is a division between is the fear and the experience relates to the issues before the immigration or the forced immigration or after the forced immigration. We used to talk about only long and distant places. Now when we see what happens in Europe and here in Germany, we can say the experiences of fear and trauma are not just from the faraway places, they could be in here also at the same time. So when we talk about then and today and in the future, past, present, future, we usually talk about a principle that we use a lot in our work. We talk about the principle of continuities. Since we all live in a very uncertain time, there is no certainty of anything that we experience and live in. We create a defense mechanism that we call continuity. Continuities is the way that I think about, looking at yesterday, looking at the past, trying to think of what's going to happen in the future or predict the future by yesterday. So we look at this as a kind of a bridge from the past through the present to the future. And in a time of crisis, continuities are usually broken. I'm going to go through the continuities really, really fast because, of all the issues we have in here, there isn't a lot of time to go through this. But one of the most important continuities is the cognitive continuity, which is my image of the world. What do I understand from my world? Think about living I will take the example of living in Kurdistan, in a certain role, in a certain situation, understanding the way everything is working, and having to move away to a different place. How does everything work in a different place? How do I know the rules? How do I know the logic? How do I know the language? Who do I speak to? Everything about cognition is completely distracted and we go into some kind of a cognitive dissonance. Roles. Each one of us has so many different roles. What is my role? If I have to leave, if I'm forced out of my country, my place, my former life, what is my role now? What am I going to be doing? So there is a confusion of roles. There is confusion of expectations. Maybe unemployment. One of my roles is to be a food provider, a money provider for my house. What am I doing now without any opportunity to do that? So that would be a crisis in there. Social. If I'm forced out, am I forced out with my family? We talked about family reunification before. Am I still with my friends? Do I know any people around me? I can see here so many people, let's say if we're talking about the Kurds issues, the fact that there's so many together here, this is making it a little easier because there is a social circle to relate to. But if you don't have anybody, the major issue would be isolation. It would be damage to communities. It would be a whole thing about that. And one of the most important issues in continuities is how do I look at myself? What is my history? How do I know myself? What do I believe in? What are my values? Now think about if I go through a very difficult experience. If I'm forced out of my history, and I'm forced out of my values, maybe my religion, maybe my belief, and the values that people live by, this is a major, major crisis. So that's part of what we need to understand when we talk about issues like this. So I'm kind of fighting here for time, so yeah, we will do that. So when we look at immigration issues, again, one side is everything that was before the immigration, and then everything after the immigration. So we're talking about trauma and torture and mass violence and everything on this list. On the other thing, on the other hand, we have frustration and disillusionment and legal issues and all that stuff. But what about on the way? We're talking before and after. What about on the way? What about these pictures? I didn't want to put any words to the pictures because I think the pictures are actually telling the story for themselves. Is this on the way? What about how you come out of this situation when you do come out of this? This is your present. It's not about your past or your future. It's about your present. So how do you go through this? So I'm going back to the definition of refugees, and I'm going back to the word fear. The word fear is, for me, a equivalent of something that's driving into trauma. And then we start talking about trauma. I'm going to save you the talking about trauma right here and about resilience, because we don't have time for that. And I'm going to move on to what we want to, that's the other disturbance I didn't think about. And we need to talk about, and this is going to take 2 minutes, and then I'm going to move over to Talya. How do we look at immigrants, forced immigrants in this way, in a new country? And obviously, a lot of us are in a new country, and what are we actually looking for? There is an index. This MIPEX is an index made by a lot of countries, as you see, with a lot of indicators, but mainly 8 policy areas that we should look at, and if we deal with them in our own way, we know that we're doing a lot for the immigrants. So the first, and you can see the whole 8. The first would be in labor and employment. Can we make sure that immigrants, refugees, can have some kind of employment? This would be a basic issue. Are we setting up ways for them to be united as families? What are the laws that are allowing them to bring in family? What are the difficulties around it? Education and health. Is there any access to services in education and health? Are we providing for them? Are we helping them provide for them? Residence, which is already political issue. Residence, anti-discrimination laws. Everything that has to do with policy making towards them, political participation and nationality. I'm going to start up for Talya by telling you that the principles that we adhere to and we try and implement for that are, first of all, community-based approach, which is what we talk about, resilience, active coping, empowering the people. That's important. I'm finishing. and cultural adequacy that I was talking about before, and not to forget leadership. We can talk about leadership for a long time. I'm going to leave this to her. And one of the most important issues, participation. You cannot help people without them participating in the process. So I'm going to find out your, okay, this was very important for me. We have to move from here to here. Okay, now this is yours.
Hello. I'm going to move to the experience of the Israel Trauma Coalition, but this is just a metaphor. In the world, in the world of today, crisis has many faces. We have wars, we have natural disasters, we have man-made issues, and what I will share with you is the story of the Israel Trauma Coalition that was created in Israel 16 years ago. And the reason the Israel Trauma Coalition was created because there were many terror attacks in the country and services were very fragmented. There was no coordination between service providers in Israel, and the provision of services was not comprehensive. Many NGOs, many government ministries provided care without collaborating with each other. The needs were huge. There were many terror victims throughout the country, and something needed to be done. And so we created a coalition of NGOs that all provide care to victims of terror, but they have different approaches and they have different perspectives. So some took care of children, others took care of elderly, some took care of new immigrants, others took care more of training, the others provided direct care. We brought them together to the table and we said, let's create together a way of looking at the whole picture. And this is what we did. The purpose of this was to prevent, on one hand, gaps in the service provision, and on the other hand, in preventing overlaps, because in many cases we saw that NGOs are providing the same things to the same population, and there are places where they didn't. And so we looked at the victims of terror, but we also looked at the circles that surround them. And we understood that services need to be provided not only to the victims, but also to the caregivers. Because we all know that people who provide care to victims, wherever they are also victimized in their own way. They suffer from burnout, they suffer from compassion fatigue, and after a while, if we don't take care of the caregivers, we will lose them. And we also will have on our hands many more people who are traumatized. And so this is how it came about. ITC brought together, as I said, service providers from different kinds of services, and the added value, of course, of this is to look together at what can be done not only within the NGOs, but also to create collaborations with the governments and to look, of course, with the local populations who need care themselves. What we did, the way we work in every crisis that we begin working with is we do a mapping of needs and resources. We look into the population that we are working with and we see local, as the Ruvi just said before, we find our local partners. Usually they are NGOs, representatives of the organization that we are working with, and we find local partners and we do a mapping of needs and resources in the population that we work with. When we speak about trauma, we usually speak about a one-time event. But the work that we've been doing and the years that have passed since we've been doing our work have taught us a lot about long-term stress. We are no longer talking about only a one-time event. When you speak of refugees, when you speak about people who are exposed to long-term war, like they are in Ukraine or in Israel, then you see people who are in need of a different approach of treating trauma. And so what we do is we provide direct care, And we also invest a lot in working with teams, because as Ruvi said, even in Israel, but of course in other countries, we do not believe that people from the outside should do the work. We believe that we should train local caregivers to do the work. So everywhere we work, even if it's in Israel, we believe that in different cities throughout the countries, we should train the local caregivers to be able to identify trauma and to work together to provide the best care possible. And so we create a very big comprehensive approach to working with trauma, whether it's on a local level or whether it's in a national level. So a lot of work is done on providing direct care in the local level by local service providers, and you need to understand, even in Israel, which is a very small country, we have a lot of differences between populations. We have Jews, we have ultra-Orthodox Jews, we have secular Jews, we have the Arab society, we have Druze, we have new immigrants that come from all over the world, and every group brings with it its own challenges. And so when you provide direct care, you need to make sure that it's tailor-made to the population that it's given to. When you create team support or training, you also need to make sure that the team member knows what has to be done. So we work in Israel, and I will show you in a minute, with very different kinds of teams. Every training that we provide is tailor-made to this population. I will focus on this because I still want David to be able to share the national hotline in Israel as a platform for being able to bring together people to both use the service and also move on. And you will see here, when we speak about resilient civil society, we chose the word resilience and not focus on trauma, because the word trauma implies helplessness, implies being weak, not knowing what to do. And the word resilience implies being proactive, making sure that we know what to do and that we take responsibility on ourselves. And so we chose the word resilience in the work that we do in Israel and outside of Israel. And this is how we look at the community. When you look at this picture, you see all the people that we identify within a community. Wherever you begin. We begin with the leaders, we look at the education system, and we'll see what the teachers know in order to be able to work in a class full of children that may be agitated, traumatized, suffering of bereavement. We look at the psychosocial teams, where we will see clinicians and social workers and psychiatrists that are trying to offer care for people who speak a very different language and come from a very different culture, and therefore we invest a lot, again, in the local part of the community caregivers. We also look at first responders. Ruvi was talking about the police, but firefighters and hospitals are also on the first line of providing care, and they too need to know what to do. Volunteers are very important in a community because most of them are part of the community, and some of them come from the larger community. I heard a story a few days ago about a young woman who is volunteering here with the Syrian refugees, and she doesn't know enough. She feels she's very alone with the work that she's doing with the Syrian refugees, and she feels she needs to be both trained and acknowledged for the work that she's doing. Faith leaders are extremely important, because in many countries, or in many, especially in vulnerable populations, faith leaders are the venue to speak to the population, whether they are priests, imams, or just people who do not even have a formal role, but are still known to be leaders in their communities. Medical teams are very important. I'll give you just an example, even of a doctor who is working and serving a population that has just been relocated or just suffered a terror attack, and the doctor needs to know what the patient is suffering from. Sometimes the patient will come with physical symptoms, but he is actually suffering from emotional symptoms, and so even doctors and nurses need to know basic training in first emotional aid and in screening for people who are suffering. Of course, the business sector in everywhere we work are very important. They too have two roles. One is they can help the community they are part of, but the other one is because in many cases the population is part of the business sector. Business sector is also a venue for people who are working in the business sector to be helped by the businesses and also to be part of the help that the business support the community. Local NGOs, of course, are our main venue of work, because when we bring local NGOs together, we can create a shared language and work together. And of course, the municipality in which the population is extremely important. Now, all our work is done both top-down and bottom-up. We always work with the populations, but also with the government. And these are the principles of our work, both in Israel and abroad. The work we do in Israel is, again, we do it in other countries. When we go to other countries after a disaster or after a terror attack, the first thing we do is we identify our local partners. We identify together with the local partners. We bring the model of doing the mapping of needs and resources of this community, and we create the program together. And of course, the program that we create in Ukraine is very different than the program we created in Boston after the marathon or in Paris after the attack, because every country has different challenges and of course different resources to cope. Again, I cannot tell you enough how important it is to work with the service providers, because service providers, once they are burnt out, the services that they provide, of course, suffer a lot. They have less patience. And another point I want to make, to bring up, is the point of the intergenerational impact of trauma. In Israel and in other countries, when a person is forcibly moved from his, not even physically from his home, but moved from his zone of comfort. If you look at the parents in the city of Sderot in the south of Israel, where there have been rockets for the last 14 years, and you think of a 30-year-old mother who has 2 children, and she was brought up in this reality. She has, if she hasn't worked through her trauma, she will have less patience as a mother, she will have less patience as a wife, she will not be she will be too preoccupied with her trauma to take care of her children. And so when we look at the intergenerational aspects of trauma, we need to make sure that if we need to understand that if we do not take care of the first generation, the trauma will carry on to the next generation. This is why, again, we focus on understanding the needs and the culture of the people that we work with. And the last thing I will say is that in our model, we have 4 blocks. One, and they complement each other, so it doesn't matter which one is the first or the last. One is the training mode. We train, as I said, service providers wherever they are. The second one is the clinical mode, where we provide, or we help them provide care to the local population. The third one is the hotline, which is again a venue that David will speak about in a minute, a venue to provide care and to be very accessible, because a hotline is a very easy way of reaching out and receiving care. And the fourth one is public education. Ruvi spoke a lot about it, but it's a very important venue to either write or explain or broadcast to people what it is that needs to be done in order to overcome trauma and move on. So I will stop here and let David speak about it.
Thank you for coming. I will divide my the few minutes here for 3 parts. I will start with what is ERAN hotline in Israel, and then I will talk about the role of hotline in a calm time and the role of a hotline in a traumatic time or other traumatic situation. ERAN is 45 years operating in Israel with volunteer force, quite big for Israel. We have over 1,200 volunteers all over. A volunteer in our service is going through a process of something like almost a year of training and preparing to his task. And then he started getting calls in one of our centers. We have 12 of them in Israel. And the service has been giving on the phone, on the internet, through SMS and emails and whatever. Any given volunteers is always in a training process, and there is always like a professional on top of it. The calls that we're getting, and we're getting more calls than we can take all the times, are in every problem that you can think of. Whenever I'm asking what kind of problem you are getting on the phone, I'm saying, think of a problem, we get them already. So without even asking what you have been thinking. It can be kids, teenager, families, elderly, in Israel, Holocaust survivors, and suicide prevention. Just in the suicide prevention, we're rescue something like 700 people that are trying to commit suicide within a year. This is what we're doing, and I will go now to what the service is doing in a traumatic time. Let's say war, let's say terror attack, let's say migration, refugee, whatever. In a time like this, just as Ruvi said a few minutes ago, people need information, people need to know where they can look for help, people need to find relatives, people need to get information. The easiest way for people to get this help will be through their phone. Most of the people today, and I'm talking people in India, people in all over the countries, for the most part, people have access to a phone. Not all the time, I have to exclude, but for the most part, people have access to a phone, and it will be the easiest way for them to get help. Now, as a part of the Israel Coalition organization, and this is what we're trying to bring to other places where we have been asked to, it will be the first layer for people to get help. From the helpline, we can refer them to either psychotherapy, one of whatever, get food supply, get shelter, whatever. This is the first. This will be the first layer, the first step for them to get help. I will go to. We don't. Okay. I will go to a peacetime. In Israel, we don't really know what's different, but in a time of calm and whatever, people would use the helpline for all kinds of problems. It will be a very long conversation with our volunteers. It will be people with mental health issues, people with divorce, people with sexual orientation, everything. And it will be a very an accessible way to get help, unanimous. You don't have to come and say, oh, I want to get help because I'm confusing about, let's say, my sex orientation, and without knowing, without telling their parents, whatever, it will be very accessible, very natural place for them to get help. And this is a nice thing and the power of this tool, and it also gives a sense of strength for the community, because the people that are giving the help are people from the community. A lot of them are not professional, but they're getting a lot of training. So altogether, we are working very hard to try to bring people to a much safer place, and this is the reason why we came here. So thank you very much for listening to us. We're sitting here now. Thank you.
We will take a few minutes for questions before we move on to the next part, which will be, as we said before, we will case study, the court will share the story. So if there are any questions until now.
The idea of the hotline, so would that actually be for every time you have a disaster that you set up a hotline for the people who are actually concerned?
No. The hotline is working. Yeah, I can do it. The hotline is operated.
24/7.
It's operating all year round, every time, all the
No, I
time.
mean, that's what it does in Israel, but how about abroad?
The same. For the most part, well, if we establish it for a crisis time, it's very much dependent on the community whether they would like it to keep it open or closed. We're not the one that will make the decision for them, but we'll help them to build the system. To build, there is also a technical component to it, which I haven't gone to this part, but it will be their decision afterwards.
I will give you an example. In one of the places we worked after a big attack, there wasn't one hotline that provided responses to the public. And even the basic thing of people wanting to know where the people who are injured were sent to was not available. And there was a lot of chaos in the community. So sometimes to say we have one number that you can call, and this number will give you can hold it for 2 weeks and you can continue, using it. But the idea of a hotline, making a hotline available in times of crisis, of course, makes services very accessible. Yes.
I just would like to make sure I got it right. Did you mention that you save your organization 700 people from committing suicide a year?
700.
1 year. In 1 year.
700?
Yes.
In 1 year?
Yes.
In small Israel?
Yes. Yes. And
I don't know our numbers.
I will tell you. I know your numbers. And what is nice about it, I'm saying that suicide prevention with.
I just want to make sure.
I hope it's not a suicide call. Well, I will continue.
I'm so sorry.
The good news about it, the good news about it, the suicide prevention through a good hotline is very easy. Which is, we always say to whoever wants to do it, it's very easy. Whoever calls us in a situation of suicide, he would not commit suicide the same day.
He wants to be stopped.
He would be stopped for this day. Then it's very important for him to get further treatment, but this is the beginning of it.
Thank you.
I think David will support me when I say that the person who suffers and understands that he is not alone, whether it's through the hotline or through help in the community, makes a big difference for him. And so the hotline, when it's there for a person who is really in acute stress, the hotline provides a sense of I'm with you. It makes a big difference. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, so I just want to say that one night I had a call because this was a line that was set up for that day, and somebody said it was 2 o'clock at night or a.m. and somebody says, "This is the hotline." I said, "Yes, this is the hotline." I said, "I'm not." So this is not the right one. Okay, Shirin. Shireen?
Shireen.
Please come on. It is a pleasure to introduce Shireen. I don't have your full name. Shireen Ibrahim Fatah? Okay, and Shireen is the ambassador for peace for the Kurdish organization, and she's going to give us some of the details of what it is to be a Kurdish woman in times of distress. And she is a translator. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, please.
Translator, please introduce yourself.
Ja,
Introduce yourself.
ja, also auf Deutsch, ich übersetze auf Deutsch.
Yeah, that's
Auf Deutsch?
Ja.
No English?
Ich spreche auf Englisch und dann besser auf Deutsch.
Okay, so we'll manage. I want to say that we have. Okay.
انجليزي ترجمة بالترجمة.
No, we don't have time for discussions now. We have 10 minutes for this, so we know it's kind of difficult. So please go ahead. I'm going to go sit down by an English speaker so I can understand what she's saying.
okay.
In the name, one family under God, greeting equality and peace. Ladies and gentlemen, dear brother and sister, it's a pleasure for me. I participate in this meeting and this conference for Congress. It is an honor for me. I think when I talk about story, 40 million people, they not have country. I talk about story, myself and another my friend, the sister, they are sitting in here. I participate in this conference not about Shireen, she want to go to German about tourism. I'm in here because I want to make relationship with our people, with family, with leadership, with young leadership, with the middle classes, because my issue, my situation, they need that. I would like to intake my speech with a very famous saying, which say, do not tell me about my religion, but let me see religion in your morals and behavior. This is my issue. My issue not religion and not ethnic. I need development, my nationality, but everything. I would like to talk about my story in Kurdish languages because my family, my sister, to be happy. Yeah. Barizan. 5 دقیقه از نکارم مسیج یخو جروک خو ولات یخو بگیم ما دنیای 5 دقیقه بلکه وقتی که دریج دوید.
Guten Tag. Ich frage, ob das, wie wir auf Deutsch übersetzen, brauchen. Ja? Also, guten Tag, mein Name ist Aziz Moulami. Ich komme aus Irak, aus Kurdistan, und ich versuche jetzt gerade die Geschichte von den jungen Damen auf den wahren Taten zu übersetzen. Wenn es was geben sollte, ich bitte um Entschuldigung. Sie hat gerade gemeint, dass sie kann nicht auf 5 Minuten ihre Geschichte dazu über die ganze Welt übermitteln.
جروکا صدای 20 و 21 جروکا ویتنیا دم شرع یکی و دوی خلاص بوی خلق پلان دانن ملتان پلان دانن دولتا پلان دانن محفل دولی پلان دانن بیتا صدای مافی مروف و صدای مافی جنه و صدای مافی ملت بندست.
Meine Geschichte ist es von sehr, sehr lange her. Seit Jahren, die nach dem Krieg, die Leute haben geplant, sich zu organisieren, die Gerechtigkeit von Frauen durchzusetzen.
او صدای بیسته صدای بو کو ملت کردش وکی همی ملتان چاواره بو گروجه که چارمی صحابه تا پیش چاو و جنا کردش جز اگوش وی ملتی گروجه که بگه تمافی خوب.
Die Frauen, die kurdischen Frauen, die wollten genau wie anderen Resten Frauen der Welt ihren Recht in diesem Leben haben.
بله گلو از بسیار دیکم صدای بیستم نگه گلیبوی از 16 سه دم ملت مکی میاباران بود جینوساید بود حلب جا.
Ich frage mich jetzt, ob es überhaupt...
I have to do it in English because I heard some people that wouldn't understand it.
Okay.
So, could you repeat it again, please?
بله جیروکا من بگوره جیروکا 40 میلیون کس هست که امریکا جابری نروشه که شروع آلایوان بلند بیتین ولاتا.
Yeah. We are a country with a history, a nation with a history about 40 years, 40 million and 40 million people who have been suffering, and we have also examples like Halabja, you know, the people have been suffering for this tragedy.
جیروکا صدای بیستم و بیستیکمه که محفل دواری بود صدای ما في مروب وما في زاروكا وما في جناية وما في همي ملاتي بندستا.
Okay, my story is the story of 20th century and 21st, because all over the world the people said, decided that there will be the century of the human rights and respecting the humanity.
بله ملاتي كردستانيش اكشوا ملاتان بون كو بلان دانا كو چارانو ساخو ديار بكن.
And this is also the opportunity for the Kurdish people to take part of this situation to make its own plan.
بلان اوان او بوكو او ما فاش همي لاي باش لا رامياري و ابوري و شامبيري و كالتوري بيت ابتشا.
And this plan has got, you know, just covered the social, economical, political, all aspects which has got to do with the human rights and improving the humanity.
بله بجهه داخل بو صدای بیستم او بو ملت کردستانی کیمیاباران بو جینوساید کرد 16 سی 2000 سال 1988.
Yeah, the 20th century, which is we all perhaps know about what happened to genocide the Kurds in Halabja.
بله وی دمی صدای بیسته بلکه محفل دولي بیدن بود چونکی تک دنیا بچیک نبود دنیا مازن بود تکنولوژی دنیا عالمی و تکنولوژی نبود.
Yeah, but the 20th century, the people of the world, perhaps they couldn't react because of the technological improvement and progress. But nowadays, there are so many ways to outreach your voice and what's happening with the Kurdish people.
بس صدای بیستوی کم برات زلهز دانشتن گویی دبی خطه استراتژی تایبتی شرق الاوسط هبیتن و پرنسیپیت آشتی جیفو بگیرن.
Yeah, for the 21st century, the world decided to take another plan, which is taking care of the human rights and the
مبادئ السلام.
Yeah, and the peace process.
همین سیستم دیکتاتوری ببیت سیستم که دموکراتی و آزادی خواست.
And what was all, let's say, dictatorship, now they have to re-engineer and focus on democratic way and a process.
بجارة قد جه داخل وملت من دوباره جنوسايد بوده.
And again, even in 21st century, the Kurdish people just faced another tragedy.
بله دم صدای بیستم جنوساید بود بلکه دم نظام دیکتاتوری بود ملت من جنوساید بس صدای بیستوی کم باری آزادی مروی و باوریا به ادیان و مذهب و پیکاجانی هبود چون که کردستان کلچره که باری خواهی که یکم کلچره و کوسنترک بو پیکاجان اولونه تویا اثبات کری شرق الاوسط.
So the transformation from 20th century, what happened to the Kurds, it was also repeated in 21st century. Now we have to leave this not to make it a political side.
Not political.
And now you have to focus on the current situation. And there are two girls which have been captured by the ISIS. And I think that's why we are here. So please focus on that. Yes.
أكيد.
Sorry. I'd just like to mention to all of us that we're interested in the human aspect of the situation.
Yeah.
أكيد جنا كرد دمي از بحث جینوساید کم بچی جنا کرد جینوساید بچی زاروک کرد جینوساید بچی ملت کرد جینوساید بچی کی کردستانی بو نک مشکل من دین و مذهب بو.
So when I'm talking about the women's situation, and especially the Kurdish women's situation, it's not only what has happened and all the massacres, all the tragedies, but I think for the human rights point of view.
و هردم بجنا کردی دو جارا بنداز بیاد. یک کامل یک جزء کش ملت کرد که کرده کردستانیه یا دویجی کشنه بلکه زو جارا شریدا یا کار اینا بو نزع الشرفه یا تقدانا کلتور آن آشتیا کمالاتی.
So the role of the Kurdish people during the whole process was not only, just during the war and in suppression all the things, but also in a time of peace, respecting the human rights and the dignity of the people.
ولسان حال مجید دو خوش که مری نشتن دم 3/8/2014 افکاری ساعت بسر ملت کردستانی هاتی بتایبتی منطقه شنگاله سنوری شنگاله بلکه 5000 خوش کتما و دای کتما و زارو کتما جینوساید کردن و هات نفروتن و 400,000 کس حتی نکاجی آواره بوینا و زور وانش لیره دارشنه که حتی نکجاوارینه که اول مزور داریا سرواتی سرچه بود بسیار کن محفل دولی بوچی کلا اتشبهم از انسان بو صدای 21 صدای قرار مجلس الامن 13/25 قرار دا بو جن دوره که بالا ببینیدن بو آشتیه بو حالا نزاعات نکد پیشه ببیتن و جینوساید ببید.
What now Shirin is doing actually to give you an example of the 2 girls which have been captured by the ISIS. But also we lost, and still we don't know what happened to 5,000 women and girls. And besides, there are about 400,000 people, refugees from the Shangal area.
أبا أوخش كنا وكواخش كودايكت كو زاروكتوان ظلامتوان أنفال كريتوان أنفال كينو حتى نكتشافارينا ويا مواكي نفقرن جوارينا كودا كانجي رفات عياليوان وزاروكتوان هدركه هدوان دي اكدبشت زاروكي هواي زندية يوان زندينا.
Well, Zarok, it means children. So Shirin is mentioning that what these people, the Kurdish, the Yazidis, they have suffered quite a lot what the ISIS did because they lost their children. They've been captured and taken away their children. They are still waiting one day. I think that's the question. That's the reason. They are still waiting. Where are our children? Where are our men and women? And I think this is very important. Well, us, just we are talking about trauma, and I think now it's important. So make it short, please.
Okay. أبا أوخش كنا دمي جوارينا دبيجن الميديا أبكا دنيا بيشكفتي دنيا بتشوكا دبيجن ورا أبريكا ما مخبرك جماعة فلان جهي مجال جنوبي بتوسط عراقي بتيانجي دولو بلد شنغالي بيتن كآية زاروكيتوان ظلامتوان كزكاريتوان رفاتتوان نفدنا هستيتوان نفدنا.
Yeah. So what I understand from Shirin is not these 2 girls. It's an example. But I think all the Yazidis are now thinking, looking, searching for their own children. Where are they? Are they in the middle of Iraq, or in the south of Iraq, or somewhere outside of Iraq? So people still are waiting and expecting that one day they will come back. I think it's true. Okay.
نكاس بسيار ذكر. هاي قالوا من نبت أجر قلاطي من اندبهت نبت أجر أزبلسي بمشكلة إن أيلاروي نفسي كيبه بسيارة حالات من نفسي علاج بكر. شوفي مصريين كيشا نكربروي جنا كرد بوي كردستاني بوي مسألة سيكولوجية.
So the final question is, I think that you are here. It's we are not asking for the food. We are not asking for the water. We are asking for the help from the psychological point of view. So what can you do to help these people when we are taking out the hand of the ISIS and Daesh? I think that's the big question. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So eventually we did get to the point that we wanted to kind of show you. But we want you to please sit in here because we are going to open some questions to the panel here in a second. But before that, we want to give you another example of the work that's been done in Ukraine with IDPs and army people suffering post-traumatic stress disorder. And for that I would like to ask Robert, I can't even pronounce your last name. Tultzrow.
Written not
And
correctly.
Robert is from the Pompidou group of the European Commission. And please. Because we're going to have some questions.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much, Talya, for inviting me. Normally I start by introducing my organization, which is called the Cooperation Group to Combat Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking in Drugs. It's also called the Pompidou Group. But this time I want to start with why we are working together. And with a quote which I found quite impressive. So I would like to start with a quote which I found quite impressive by the British politician who was murdered last week on an open street. It was Joe Cox. And in one of her speeches, one of her last speeches at the Parliament, she was talking about Syrian refugees, and she said that these children have been exposed to things no child should ever witness, and I know I personally would risk life and limb to get my two precious babies out of that hell. So I think this not only refers to the situation of Syrian children, but to children in wars all around the world, also in Ukraine. And I think most of them are exposed to things they should not have witnessed, and we want to get them out of this hell. And I think it's a bitter irony that this British MP had also two children. It's most likely that this experience of their mother being killed is also a traumatic event for them, and they will probably suffer their whole life. So to a certain degree we could say that this hellhole can be everywhere. It can be in Orlando, it can be in Paris, it can be in Brussels. And but what is certainly true is that refugees and people who experience war in their country are much more likely to experience a traumatic event. And so what do refugees normally experience? They experience loss of their homes, loss of their culture when they go to a new country. They experience exclusion and stigmatization in their host countries and communities, and many are unemployed, many are quasi detained, and often they don't have anything to do, they are bored. And studies also show that refugees are much more likely to develop a mental illness. Why am I listing this up, and why am I saying this coming from an organization that deals mainly with drug policy? Because all these factors we see as the main reasons for people turning to drugs and becoming substance abusers, becoming addicted to drugs. So by preventing trauma, by preventing stress, by helping people to come over the loss of a family member, we can also help people to prevent them from taking drugs. Just yesterday I was in a clinic in Germany, in Berlin yesterday, and where I talked to a doctor. He told me that 90% of his patients experienced a traumatic situation in their life. And these were highly drug-addicted people using heroin, etc. And so we can say that it brings us actually to the simple formula that trauma prevention and treatment is also drug prevention. And that's also why we came together with the ITC and decided to start a project together in Ukraine. Come now to the second point of my short speech. What is the Pompidou Group of the Council of Europe? Just a few words. We're an intergovernmental organization that was founded in 1970 on the initiative of the French President Georges Pompidou. That's why we have this name, and he wanted to find an international answer to the increasing drug problem at that time. Then we became incorporated in the Council of Europe. So I have to correct you, Ruvi, we're not the European Commission, we are the Council of Europe. But we work closely together with our colleagues from the European Commission. And we have 38 member states in Israel since the 1st October of 2013, a member of the Pompidou Group. Why that? The Council of Europe is having 47 member states, but Israel is not a member state of the Council of Europe. But we are something like an intergovernmental organization within an international organization. We have the right also to invite and to work together with other countries which are not in the Council of Europe. So through our diplomatic contacts, we came in touch with ITC and decided to work together in Ukraine. And just, I think always pictures are more than 1,000 words. So that's a picture here of the accession ceremony. I only have a few slides left just to show you what are our target groups. We were working together with veterans and voluntary organizations that provide psychological support to soldiers. We were meeting the families and trying to figure out what are their needs. We work together with ITC here, just a few pictures of ITC experts in action. We're very happy to have them because they have very specialized knowledge which very well fits into our program on supporting, providing psychosocial support to internally displaced persons in Ukraine, and to soldiers also. We organized workshops and trainings with military psychologists and NGOs. We organized assessment missions. We also went to eastern Ukraine, to Donetsk region, to Lugansk, and met with organizations providing support, frontline workers. We were very close actually also to the front line. Some participants, some meeting partners could not come because contrary to what we have as an impression about Ukraine, it's still a quite hot war. Shelling takes place every day, people die every day, and as a result of that we have 1.4 million internally displaced persons. Military presence was there. We are planning a number of activities, roundtables in Kyiv with policymakers, PTSD trainings, and a study visit to Tel Aviv in October to Israel. And
Tel Aviv is not Israel.
Okay, to Israel. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Happy to answer the questions.
Okay, so we are going to open up this panel for questions. And excuse me, they can sit there, that's okay. I want to explain something. Please, we need some quiet. Thank you. I want to explain something about the way we're doing. Excuse me. Excuse me. Please, can you do it on the here? Can you explain on this? I want to explain to all of you why we are doing it the way we are. Excuse me. Shirin. Excuse me. There's one thing that we never do in our workshops or presentations. We make sure that we don't reactivate trauma of individuals by telling traumatic stories of individual people. We are talking about trends, we're talking about communities, we are talking about different issues, but we cannot allow ourselves as professionals to allow personal stories, horror stories, to be told in a non-protective way. So that's why we will not tell the stories, the individual stories of different people. what we are trying to do is finding out who you are. And can you do something about the door? Please. This is turning into a very interesting session. Kind of very interesting coping. Now, the thing that we want to do is find out more from the practical experience of different people, especially from the people in here. David, please join us in here. And we want to ask some questions. I have some questions that I want to ask. And I would like to offer the floor also to you, if you have any questions. But I would like to ask to start with one very specific question. Okay? One very specific question to all of you. Okay? We're talking about people, eventually. We're talking about the stories of people. When you look at the different populations that you know, your population, the people that you work with, the people from ITC, and maybe I will add some of my knowledge to this also. When you look at the different people, what do you see? What do you see in terms of family needs? What do you see in terms of children needs? What do you see in terms of individual needs? What would be the most urgent thing to give to this population in terms of helping them? I need to start with
Mr. Barker, you translate. Okay. أو بس برسامحني كان قاعد شد بيت نكاح حالي حاضر زارو كيتا فاميليا هوا كذا لأن كذا Okay.
So did you understand? مشاركة جيشتي.
بلى.
Okay. جامعة.
إنه كان مقولي أو كورسات ساملاتي ما هتي ملاتي ما في استفهمي علاقاته بت exactly مسألة psychology. مسألة education چونكي زارو كيت ما أفحد سب جنسات ساملاتي ما هتي بلکه 528 زارو دفعه دوکومنت انگلیسی و عربی و کردی و نانویسی دوکومنت و داتا اصلیه های 500 زارو که ما دترسن حتی از بین ما مالا خوشت بیش نکو تأثیر دینی هبیتن من دینه می بگورن یا ترسه که نفسی ها بچه بود.
Okay, so answering the question is not that easy, I understand too. There are so many documents, but the fact is that the children who have been suffering from that trauma, they need the psychological help. Psychological help for the children is very complex, but what can you offer?
Okay. That's a question to us?
Not only children, and also women. They need center for psychology, for training, for, for development.
So Shirin, what you're actually saying that is that the population in the most need is children and women to help them go through the trauma.
Yes.
Okay.
It's very, very important,
Robert, can you add anything from your experience?
Sure, yeah. I think that the first thing what they need is safe space, some shelter, some food, want to send children to school. So, but what we learn is
also explain in Kurdish because.
Okay.
Can you repeat it again?
But what we learned about trauma is also that trauma is caused by constant level of stress and not having a safe place, not having food, not having the possibility to send their children to school means that the people permanently experience some form of stress, which then again can lead to more problematic mental illnesses and also substance use disorders.
ساعتين مسدته بيستيان بزيجة شوية كأمين وأمانة بيت لبروي وصحكي وايد كدينا سيكولوجيا نفسيا أو عليه تأثيرية كدينا أو زاد واي لبو خواردمانية لبو آوى لبو تربيتها لبو دراستها لبو كتاب خانة بلا بيش مشتك زيجة أمين
I will speak about the response in this case. I think when Robert and Shireen are speaking about the needs of mothers and children and of course other adults, and when Robert is speaking about a safe place, the safe place of course is a physical place, but it is only very much a psychological place. When a mother can tell her child one mother will tell her child, I really don't know what to do, and she will cry a lot. And the other mother will tell her child, we are together in this, we will find a way. These children will be developing in a very different way.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is we need to help mothers and to help children and to help, again, as I said, I keep repeating it, to help caregivers to know how to work with these people and to make sure that people, even in the most stressful hour, will have the tools to know how to help themselves and to find help if they don't have it. And again, being part of a community is one of the best tools in many times wherever in the world. Okay?
در الجوابكاني شيرين أو برادرة دو ملاحظة هي شيرين تأكيد لسر أول كاتوا كبتايبتي بو يارمتيداني آفرتو منالو أوانا بشويتي لبو علمي نفسي وسايكولوجي لهمان كاتا برادرة ترباسي أو زيغيدكا كتأمين أمانة بيتن يعني وكنت أولنيا فقط زيغايك بيتن بلام أو زيغايك كتأمينة دتواني أو شتانا بكي كأويكا شين خان مش باسي
I want to add something to what Talya just said. Two things, and I'm trying not to be sounds too simple. One is that we're trying to find the resource within the person who needs help.
اوكي دري امان بسالي تال على اساس دموي محاولة بكي جوابك ببينين حلك ببينين نوا لبو او مشكلة بلان كأواني بخويان لوكال كالمنطقة كان او شتانا بخوان لا اواني كديانوي يعمتيدن اواني كلوكال خوشي او زيغانا خوشي او منطقة ديانوي لوين داس بيكا.
And the second one, and again without being too simple, is to give a sense of hope.
دري دومينش أوازور أو بدي أوي وكبري اشتكزور اهتمامي في ندم بلام هيواتسيا هيوامي هو هيوام.
Okay, so you actually kind of opened up for my next question to the panel. We know that people can cope once they have the opportunity to ventilate, to be validated for what they think, and to be normalized for what they're feeling and for what they're going through. Even though nothing is normal, reactions are normal. So the next question for all of you is, how do you instill hope? How do you create a way of hope?
دري أمان جل بسيارة كانوا مناقشة يوم كرت بلام عملها ما كعتا كإيور باسي هوادا كانوا كهوب هوادا كان بلام شون حلي أو مشكلة كان شون أموتي دقل لا هوا
هوا أويا كإستا أوفيسيكي رسمي هيا أوفيسات بأوي كس بكيف يخود تاتو إعلامي كي تولتروو برامنك كزياتر بريندار بكا أوفيسيكي رسمي هيا أوفيشال يعني نك شخصي بدانا بريكاي أو أوفيسا دتوانن هاتشتك هاريكايبن چونكي استا چوارينا چند خوشكيما دينا كرين سلعي كده كريد دمانويتن إمكانيات مادي معنوي لبردستي أو أوفيسا بتنا إما هاتينا فعالة طلب كان إما هاتينا بالرسمي بأوي كس تجارت بكسو كاري مانكت نكنا سلعك بريكاي أو أوفيسا زور شتي باش دكريتن بالرسمي وبكونتاك وببروبوزل.
So what Shirin is saying, in Kurdistan, she has an official office.
No, me.
I mean, in Kurdistan.
Yeah, have a high committee
yes.
or the office,
So
yeah.
there is an official office, a house, who is taking care officially of this traumatic situation and this crisis. And this is to prevent that not to abusing the people and to deal them and to treat them. So this is very important.
I'm
yes?
going back to the question of hope.
زيادة روم كان
يوا
بله بهو هواية كلام سنتين له أوفيسا علاقات درس بالريليشن شيب درس بو ما بين كردستان وألمانيا بلكو كان أفريقيا كرواني ألمانيا كانوا بوي علاج بكري بله من خم شخص خم كسكتيرا بتاعهم أو علاج عرف الذكر دميت روالاتي من أو خلك ديفلوبمنت بيتن تأهيل بيتن باريكاي أو سنترانا باريكاي أو أوفيسا.
So what is she's saying about the House of Hope, of talking about the hope, is to establish and to build a bridge, so you can help the people either locally or you take them out of the country, like in Germany, and perhaps also to Israel.
أو سنترانا but maybe have different doctor or teacher, but they needed the development training. يعني I'm a teacher, but I cannot talk about psychology because I don't have any.
So they need skills. They need skills.
Yeah.
That's the idea. So they need train the trainers.
Yeah.
So all right. Yeah.
I think hope can have very different forms. I mean, for everybody, hope is something different, and to create it, you have to find different ways of achieving that. I have a good friend, for example, who was suffering from a glioblastoma a weekend before, and it's normally actually a deadly brain cancer, but there are a few cases of people who go through. So his hope is actually to focus on the same kind of medication those people took in order to get through that. Concerning Ukraine, I think the diagnosis is not so severe as for a brain cancer, which is mostly deadly. But I think it's the same way of creating hope by providing examples of how it can work in other countries. And that's also the mission of the Council of Europe, to bring in examples from other countries like Israel, like other European and partner countries that are in our network.
بمكاوي دري على أساس كانوا باسي هوا ذكين مقصدي تشون هوا درس ذكين بس الشيوي هر مشكلات هر كارثاتك هواي خويه والله بدي فكر لي بكيوا تشون حل أو مشكلة ذكي بوي بتواني كهوا تبي والله كيستيد بيارمتي ولهم زورك هي أجل بخود نتواني معناه بدي كيستيد بشارزاي أو كساني هي كدتواني أو مشكلة حوكا.
I want to remark to what Shirin just said, and I don't want to go into a personal stories about hope. Personally, I have a lot of experience in searching for hope, but I think, Shirin, you have the strength, and from what you just said, you have the strength of finding hope in a helpless situation. And what I think that what we can offer as a professional, maybe we can find a way of how to help your people restoring hope. But it will be a long process. But by hearing you, I can be quite optimistic.
دري أجر أمان جيلتو رابقرم باسي هودكي دري أمان يعني وكبري أجر بحقيقة بازوكا يعني وكبري زور بوزيتيف نيو دبري أما محاولة دكين يارمتين جو بدين لهاربارك بيتن برام أو تجربة زورة وكبري فقط فكر كنا ولا هو يعني هوا برام دبي مصدر كتبي بيوستي كانت وكبري زور باش فكر لبكلا أجر نازل دبي داوبكي أوان يارمتي تعملن شون هوبي ببني حللوا أو هوبي ببني.
Shirin used the word bridge, and I find it very beautiful and very powerful because it's all, I think, about creating bridges for people who are suffering from trauma.
Yeah, that's very important. أو دري أو أفرت دري بتعبتي شيرين باسي بردك كأتو بتواني بردك دروز بكين لولا معناها أنا مدتواني مساعدة يكتري بكين وبزانین پێویستیتان چیە بۆەوەی بتوانین تێبگەین حەلی ئەو مشکلە بکەن ئەوە زۆر زۆر بینە. Just finish.
I want to give you an example of a city in Israel that was, as I said before, under terror attacks for many years. And when we began working there were people who needed therapy, there was no therapy, there were no therapists, they didn't work together. And we created, I didn't use this expression here, we created what we call the Resilience Center. And the Resilience Center is a way for the community to say, we are able to take care of our own people. And in order to do that, we provided them with training. And now, when anything happens, they have this center and they are able to provide care immediately and also on a long-term basis. They are able to work with their professionals, with their volunteers. They are able to provide care all over the place. And I think the issue of we are able to take care of ourselves, and if we don't know, we can ask for it, is a very important concept. And so concepts of resilience in Israel, or resilience centers in Israel, has become the equivalent of being hopeful, of saying if we can have resilience, we can answer the needs that arise, we can take care of ourselves.
دەرێمان وەکو میسالمان هەیە لە ئیسرائیل کارەساتێکی وا کە ڕوویدا زۆری پێچوو تاکو ئاخری گەیشتنە ئەو حەلەی لەگەر یەکتری هەر ئەو مجتەمەعی کە لەو کارەساتەیان بەسەر هاتبوو لەناو خۆیان محاولەیان کرد بە تەراپی و فیزیۆ و ئەو شتانە کە حەلی مشکلەی خۆیان بکەن ئەمەش یارمەتیماندا بەڵام هەر شتێکی دەیکەی ئەتو ناتوانانی برێی ئەوەم بدێ ئەوەی دەکەم نا مەقسەدی لەو مەوزوعی چییە لەناو کۆمیونیتی خۆت ئەو کارەساتەی کە بەسەرتان هاتیە ئەم بۆ لەناو خۆتان دەبی فکرشی لێ بکەنەوە یارمەتی یەکتری بدەن حەلی ئەو مشکلەی بکەن ئیمکانە کاتێکی زۆری پێدەوێت بەڵام ئەوانە ئیخساسیان ئەوەیە یارمەتی ئەو کەسانە بدەن کە لەناو مجتەمەعەکەی.
Thank you. I would like to add just one little thing to everybody. I think there were very important things that were said in here. There's one thing still missing for me, even though it's implicated in everything that was said. We're talking about narratives. Which is the narrative that a person is coming out from an experience with? Is it going to be a narrative of failure, a narrative of disaster, or a narrative of personal success or personal strength? If we help people develop a narrative of success, we instill something.
ئەوە شتێکی زۆر زۆر مهمە دەرێ ئەمە پێویستی نام بە چیرۆکێک چیرۆکی تو چییە؟ ئایا تو پێویست بە چیرۆکەیە کە دەبی ناجێبی یان چیرۆکێک هەیە کە ئەتو کارەساتێکی هەر بەسەر ئەو چیرۆکانە وەکو میسالە نەرەتیڤ یعنی وەکو چیرۆک تێگەیشت هەر کەسێک کارەساتی بەخۆی داهاتێ ئەمە ناتوانم لە باتی ئەو ئافرەتەی قسە بکەم دەبی ئەو ئافرەتە چیرۆکەکەی خۆی باس بکەم.
Okay, thank you. We want to open again the floor for if there are any questioning here from you, anything you want to say, not only a question, just maybe a statement. Yes, please.
Yes, I'm a social worker here in Germany. I'm working with families that are going to lose their child because it's dying. You know, what I find out is the resilience of religion is so important, but maybe you didn't make the same experience or. Because it doesn't matter what kind of religion, but grown up in a religious family, Muslim or Jewish or Christian, growing up in these rituals is such a big source of resilience. For our families, we are not a religious organization, but it's so obvious that it's help to cope to the situation that my child is going to die, and also after death. It's not comparable with anything. It's my experience. Will you share it?
A very small explanation, and then we'll ask the panel.
Yes.
لا راوست أو عفوا لا راوست باترجمة كبسة ليش تبدأ مقصدي وعفرتي دري وكو مثال كعفرتك إمكانا من داركي دزاني دبريتي لري أمبو تجربة سيا لو عنيك للان باسي ديانتان نكده باسي أوتان نكده كأواني كانوا بشروش ديانتي وها تربية كراون أما لا ألمانيا أشتان هذا كان بلان أما تمشي ويناكين أري أوا مسيحية يا نزولكية يا إسلاما تجيش أما أفرق له لري أمبو فكرة هذا الموضوع كليته
تاريخ ملت كردستاني أكبرنا جهة جديدة بحثية عن كفاتيكانا كردستاني capital example.
Okay, if you talk about Kurdistan, there is Ankara, it's the capital of Kurdistan because all people who are living there, they are Christian. Okay.
In one school, example, there is madrasa, Christian, Yazidyan, Turkoman, Sabi, they live together, they study together. أو مشكلة مانينا تجانبية مشكلة مفقودة بنا أمريكا بسرعة أيديولوجية كارتيني بين التوالتن ريليجنات أبوبورين ديوت مذهبي أبوبورين أما مشكلة مانينا نبي بروبلم جي الكردستان.
Okay, we have in Kurdistan in Erbil, in Ankara, I know there are lots of, just majority are Christians. They opened a school to let different people, multi-religious people, to go to that school. But was not the idea that the one can change the religious the other one. Because we tell them that this is a school for everybody, and we are not talking about religious. There are different religions, that's true, but they know how to deal with each other in Kurdistan.
بس سوري أبشوا لي هوايا متوتينا بينك وأبشوا لي هوايا أفكار إرهابي مثلا كدولتين نكون نظام دكتاتوري حلب جاكي ماكري أبايا فكري وهزري وشامري فلسفي أكبر كاري كان أفهزرا نه يعني بشوكي أشتي بيتا چسباندم مشكل زاركي مدو ديل أيدول religion وديل ethnic.
So what she's saying that what all happened, even with the Islamic and ISIS and all the things, they're actually trying to wage a psychological war on our children and our community.
بس I'm so sorry, the last example. فيش ده جازارو كي ما كل إزدي إنايا يعني لا psychology ببينن يتبان بدرس الدرس سلاح الدرس ده يعني حسب خلقي بوجود يعني يوم تأثيره مشكلة للكشف بل أبى دستي العشرة يهواتي يرزقتي.
I think there was a misunderstanding of your question. The question was the question was are we looking at religion or religious beliefs as a resource? And okay, Talya, can you answer?
So religion is a resource. I think I would like to expand it to spirituality as a resource because religion is very limiting in a way. And of course religion can be a great resource. And when a person goes through crisis, whether it's an illness or something from the outside, many people ask themselves very existential questions. And so spirituality and religion can be a great source of help, whether it comes from inside or from the outside. So the person who works with these communities needs to find out how these communities can find the meaning for all this that is happening, whether it's individual or as a community, and whether it's a spiritual leader or a clinician, many times we're able to help this person find some sort of meaning and a lot of strength that comes from within and from the outside, again, that says that he is not alone. So for many people, they will say God is with me, whatever religion they are from, and other people will say I'm not alone and I feel something is taking care of me. And so I think religion and spirituality are a very, very big resource. Yes, absolutely.
short أخيرا كي مقصدي أوسيا يعني فقط لا ديانة فكرنا كولا بروس بشوالي شيء يعني وتبي زائدا جيان هر فقط ديانة أفكاري تيشي وزاجر أو كسي كدوي أو اشتارم كاتن يعني دوي مساعدة وأنا كدبي فكر لو زيجي بكا لو منطقة بكا لو كالتورة بكاتن بزانا تصير دايمنشن جيتي داي أو اشتانا بتواني حل
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to move. We have two more questions. I just want to add one more thing to when we were talking relating to the presentation. This is what we meant when we said values. Okay, values is, I believe, is part of the values. Please.
أم زانين بيسودو دولة العربي دفاع الشنغاري وشكردستان هناك بر الشوفينية قومي وبينجيبسي دولة إسلامي نهى لدن برباني شكردستان وشنغاري هناك شوفو كردي إزريب حكومة كردي ليشد وسيارة منوا وحكومة إسرائيل والشعب إسرائيل أوج برشي وكو إعلام وكو مؤسسات رسمي بيدي غانبو بهايكايا كردستاني هايكايا شعب.
Okay. He makes a statement. Said what happened to the Yazidis and just all the Arab countries, all the religions, the Muslims, and when we were attacked, nobody helped us. So we were suffering, but now his question is, in terms of media, when you know what happened to the Kurds and what the ISIS did, what can you do about the media and to explain about the massacre of the Kurds, perhaps for Israeli people?
Okay, this is not going to go to the panel because this is not a professional question. This is more like a political question. We're not politicians, we're professionals. So I'm not going to let the panel deal with this. I'm sorry. Please.
So as a professional, but also as a human being, as a Jew, as a son of survivors, I want to make a personal commitment. We didn't talk and we didn't let them talk, the two girls that suffered so much. But they have been here, and being here is so important for me to be able to have a relation somehow, and that you were together with the men, that you were not alone. And I hope, I don't know what I can help. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with treating with trauma survivors. You don't really know, even the resilience we don't really know, but there is a kind of way not to forget that there is something in every human being, a spark or something like that, that can be opened again. And with this I want to tell you thank you that you came here. And let's see if there will be any possibility.
Transparency, open. أوا كابراك اختصاصي خوي يا متداني بتاعتي أواني كأنجو أوشتانة بصير هاتيا. بلام دري أمن زور حسب كرت أنجو لإيران. بلام بداخوا مازال نبو أنجو بخوتان حسبكن. بلام قلت أجل أمن وكو بروفيشنالي بمري يارمتين جو بدم قصتان لقبكن. بلام أمن ملاحظة أهم كرت على أساس بابتانا براتانا يكتان لجرا أو الترسا لوي ده أجل باشا أمن كودة توانم جيل سيروتشين جو بقرن بزان مشكلين جو سيا لكاتك بابتان لجرا يان داكتان لجرا يا كسوكاتان لجرا أمن نازل كود متصون ده توانم يارمتي أولا فكرتي يمكن أو زوجة بيم أو شتي كالتوري إيميل هل نكلي ما في عربي شو
I have example.
No, we have. I'm sorry.
It's important.
This
he wants to help.
This is very important, and I think this is why we're all here.
Break the ice.
We are here under the title of building partnerships, and this is something that we need to remember. And the reason why we're here, the reason why we brought so many of our professionals over here, and the discussions and private meetings and everything that's going to go around this meeting is about building bridges. It's about building partnerships. And we're looking to professionals all over to help us build a partnership dealing not only with the Kurdish issue, but with the issue of people suffering around the world. And I think this would also be our final words for today. We want to thank you all for coming here. We hope to be able to meet all of you in different projects, especially professionals.
Yes.
We would like to extend a hand asking you to join us and join us.
Yeah.
And join you.
Yeah, okay, applause. أولا لآخري أما جيشنا وقناعتي كباسي أول موزعيدة كين أما زوزو خبتي خوشحال كبروفيشنالك معني اختصاصي يدس أول موزعيدة وأما بوشي ويدة توانين بردشي درس بكين
بس هو مشكلة يقولي مش مشكلة ليا يعني لأن يزيبيا وحمق ونقطة برينا بشتيو جينوسايد بسرية بياناتي هيج برا عن باب هيج محاسبة كشي ناكا
كاغنا سكاني بزوانا بلام أو أمري واقع
أمري واقع بس أخونا راح نقطة برينا بشتي أو جينوسايد هاتي كرنا أو تشتغل يعني ما يعني
What he's saying is actually what you have noticed. That's what he's. It's not that we don't want to let them to talk to you and to tell her stories. It's today because they are alone and all the things. So thank you very much.
So we want to thank all of you for coming. This is a different session. If anybody wants to stay here and talk about this, you're all welcome. This is the conclusion of our session here, and we would like very much to thank you for coming. And meet you all in Hebrew we say the smachot, happy occasions.